Hey guys, it's about 6:15 p.m. on this early Tuesday evening as I'm turning on some lights in here right now in the living room because even though it's still daylight outside, it's cloudy. Basically, we've had some rain as of late, so it's kind of helped out with, saving money on, not having to turn the automatic sprinklers on or anything like that, or having to pull the hose out and attach a sprinkler to that. So, basically it's helped out in that area. But with that said, like I said, it's about six now. It's 6:16 p.m. Pacific time on this Tuesday evening. And first of all, before I start here, I should have been doing this. I thought I would be getting the hang of it, but old habits hard to break. But gonna try something new, or at least try to keep going with it. And that is basically instead of telling you at the end, I'm gonna tell you at the beginning, or at least ask of you at the beginning instead of asking you at the end. And that is to do me a solid favor, and that's like the video, ring the bell for notifications, also subscribe to the channel and share the video. Also, super chats will be open today during this premiere of this video, so we want to donate in the super chats during the premiere portion of the video. It'd be greatly appreciated. Or if you just want to say hello in the live chat, that'd be great too. And afterwards, the super thanks option will be open, as well as comments, that you can post in the comment section afterwards will be open as well. But also, guys, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube. You can find me at all your favorite audio, video, podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, SiriusXM to an extent, Spotify, Audible, Radio Public, you name it. Wherever there is a podcast that has various podcasts listed, like Solomonster Sounds Off, and a few others, if you will, the Talk is Jericho podcast, stuff like that. Wherever there's podcast listed, you will find mine there more likely as well. Also, click on the link at the top, if you will, where you can go to my new Fourth Wall store. I got one piece of merchandise there. I will have more eventually in the future, so look out for that. As well as click on the link at the bottom to go to my OG Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. And also go to the Patreon, if you will, excuse me, go to my Patreon if you will, support me there. Got a $3 and $5 tier you can choose from, as well as go to Venmo and Cash App if you would like. It'd be greatly appreciated if you can help me out during this time of change. But with that said, let's get on to the topic of this video. A lot of people have been talking about it over this past day, I should say. A lot of people have been talking about it because it's kind of big news. Now, we all know that Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery, kind of, sort of, quote unquote, on the sales block right now. And what I mean by being on the sales block, if you will, is basically they're pretty much, on the market. We'll put it that way. They're on the market. They're like a house that's on the market, that you're looking to move into, but you want to see how much it's going to go for and what it's going to result in you either having to pay rent-wise or mortgage-wise, that kind of stuff. Well, basically, Warner Bros. Discovery and David Zaslav are mostly in that same category. Right now, in a way, quote unquote, asterisk on both sides of this, I guess you could say, of this subject, if you will. Basically, quote unquote, asterisk on both sides. Warner Brothers is kind of in, in the running to be sold, or so it seems. Again, that's why you have the asterisk and the quotes, because it might say for sale, but again, there's asterisks on both sides of those words, as well as quotations, because even though they're for sale right now, or it seems, that's not quite true. That's not quite legit, if you will. And what I mean by that is, even though you got a lot of studios and corporations, throwing their names into the hat to potentially purchase Warner Brothers as a whole, or as it is right now, which would still allow for the split to happen, again, it's still kind of like in the air. Like I said, it's a quote-unquote asterisk kind of situation, to where it seems like it's going to happen, but it may not. You see, because Warner Brothers, it does feel like, they want to sell. They want to sell to to somebody, if you will, that's going to meet the price, or the sales price, that is. But also, they feel like they're the kind of studio and the kind of people in charge of that studio that want to bet on themselves. They're seeing a lot of decent returns, not major blockbusters, but some decent returns on movies that seemingly are looked at as blockbusters, but really didn't get to that to that point, if you will, box office wise, that they would like. They're looking at that and they're like, yeah, this might be a good sign that we don't really need to sell, but we could still split. So again, they feel like more than likely they want to, they want to bet on themselves and everything going into next year, but that might all change. Again, it all depends on who's willing to put in the most money, bid wise, to purchase basically become the new parents in charge, to become the new owners, to basically take Warner Brothers, and move them out of the current residency and make them part of their home, make them part of their residency. But right now, again, the for sale sign that's up, you have to put like quotations between the words and an asterisk right next to those words as well, because again, we're not really certain. We're not really certain whether or not Warner Brothers is going to be for sale much longer. And that's going to be, and that's kind of what the reasoning for me doing this, because to get to the point, basically, like I said, the one thing that's been talked about throughout the day is that Warner Brothers has rejected Paramount's bid to buy them. They have. Now you got to remember, reports were that Paramount, Skydance, if you will, Paramount, which is a Skydance company, basically let it be known that if they're going to buy Warner Brothers, they want the whole shebang. They don't want to buy it and still allow the split to happen. The split to happen, I should say. They don't want to buy it and still allow the split to happen. They want the whole shebang. They want everything. All the cable, all the streaming, all the movies. They want everything from top to bottom. They don't want to just buy it and say, yeah, go ahead and do your split deal. No, they want the whole thing as a whole. And Warner Brothers and Zassoff were like, yeah, your offer is good, but we're gonna have to say no for right now. We're gonna have to turn you down. And honestly, there is a reason they're doing that. There's an honest reason they're doing that. They're doing that because according to a top 4 listing, or at least top 4 possibilities that John Campea, put up during his live stream today, and actually one thing that John Campea does, like a lot of other people do, is they like to clip out, certain sections of their podcast or the live streams, as individual videos, so it, brings in extra income, extra monetization, if you will. But anyway, in one of the clips, of course, it was basically the headline of the entire podcast, because it basically is what the initial near 2-hour podcast was going by subject-wise, topic-wise. But one of the clips he put out there was about the Warner Brothers, Warner Brothers rejecting Paramount's bid. And again, he put up on his screen 4 reasonings, and I actually took a picture with my phone of the 4 subjects off the screen. I took a picture, on screen, because I had the YouTube clip playing on the YouTube app on my smart TV, and my 4K smart TV, and basically I paused, and basically I took the opportunity while it was still on there, because he had just brought it up, and I took a snapshot of it. I took a picture of it, and then basically edited it so I can focus mainly on those 4 topics he's talking about. And these 4 topics are actually, reasonable beliefs as to why, Warner Brothers rejected Paramount's bid. And one of the reasons he says, and this is pretty much true for anyone. This is pretty much true for anyone. The number one reason he believes is Warner Brothers will. Hold on, guys. I'm getting tongue-tied here. Almost had a brain fart. Sorry about that. Almost had a brain fart there. A literal brain fart. But anyway, like I said, he lists off 4 reasonings that, like I said, I took a picture of off screen because I had the video playing on my 4K television. And credit and shout out to John Campia for this listing, because I'm also going to use it in the thumbnails along with the video. But anyway, he lists off 4 reasonings, and the top reasoning he believes Warner Brothers rejected Paramount's bid for right now is that he feels Warner Brothers he feels, and this is the number one reason in his opinion, the first reason anyway. This is the first reason, maybe the number one reason in his opinion. He believes Warner Brothers feels that Paramount will be willing, to pay more. That's his belief. That's the first thing he lists here as one of the reasons why Warner Brothers, as of right now, said no to Paramount. Wanted to outright buy them. As a whole, it's because he feels Warner Brothers believes that Paramount is willing to pay more to do so. So whatever the amount was they were offering right now, he feels Warner Brothers. He feels that Warner Brothers is looking at it like, well, if Paramount wants to buy us, they'll double the offer, if not triple the offer, to buy us. That's pretty much what It's pretty much what John's saying here, and basically double, if not triple, the initial bid they were going for, the initial offer they were going for. He feels that Warner Brothers believes that Paramount will double, if not triple, if not quadruple it, to secure the rights and the license and ownerships of the overall Warner Brothers Discovery property and company, if you will. Take it under their umbrella, if you will. That's the first reason. The second reason he believes is that Warner Brothers is waiting for another player to come in and start a bidding war, with Disney and with Disney, Fox, Comcast. Not with Disney. Let me reread that. The second reason he believes, as well, the second reason he believes is that WB, and this is John Campia's opinion, and again, these are all good, reasonable reasonable opinions. When you look at it, he believes the second reason is that WB, Warner Brothers, is waiting for another player to come in and start a bidding war a la Disney, Fox, and Comcast. Because we have to remember, and I'm glad John Campia brought this up, we have to remember that when Fox was going up for sale as well, Disney basically said, hey, we're going to buy Fox. Even before the news officially came out that it happened, Disney had basically let it slip, that they were going to outright buy Fox. However, you had Universal, via Comcast. You had Universal via Comcast come in and say, hey, not so fast. We too want to buy Fox. We too want the Fox library. And thus you had a bidding war happening until Disney pretty much won that war by outbidding Universal for the rights to Fox. In other words, they basically said, okay, Universal, you want to offer Fox that much? We'll see your offer and triple it, if not quadruple it. And that's what they did. That's what they did. Sorry about that. There was somebody that parked right in front of our driveway for a bit. I don't know why. Well, they didn't park exactly like right at the driveway, but basically let's just say you're coming in, you have to park, and you got to tune into the driveway. It would be a little difficult to do so, if you will. But anyway, like I said, basically what John's reasoning was for it is that he feels that basically the second reason that is he believes it will allow Warner Brothers to get a bidding war started a la Disney, Fox, and Comcast, because as I was saying, Disney, pretty much outright, made it known they wanted to buy Fox, but Universal through Comcast said, no, we want to buy it as well. So Disney basically said, okay, fine, we'll see, because obviously Universal made a bid, and Disney said, oh, well, we'll see your bid, and we'll quadruple it. We'll match it, and we'll quadruple it, stuff like that. And thus Disney ended up winning, the bid. They ended up purchasing Fox, if you will. Now that, most of the entertainment portion of Fox, the news and sports portions were separate. They remained their own entity. But like the entertainment stuff, 20th Century and all that became part of Disney. Even like Fox, like the Fox animation and all that, like The Simpsons and all that, Family Guy to an extent, all became part of Disney, believe it or not. And so with that said, with that said, basically, John feels, and those are our neighbors, testing our cars and everything because, again, like I've mentioned before, our neighbor has like a little car shop, a little auto shop in his, operating out of his out of his garage in his front yard. So what are you gonna do? But anyway, like I was saying, basically, everything that's entertainment wise outside of the news and sports all went under, the Disney umbrella because Disney went into this bidding war with Universal to get the rights, to the Fox name, to the Fox Entertainment portion, if you will, and basically, let it be, basically, like I said, just said, okay, well, and I do apologize. I'm a little distracted. Of course, I'm looking outside the window, checking, make sure nothing's going to happen and all that. But I do apologize. But like I said, basically Disney, you know, said, fine, we're going to match you're going to match the offer you're giving the Fox, and we'll quadruple, double it, and all that, and the rest is history. So that's what John's trying to get at. And again, I do apologize for being a little distracted. Like I said, it was a car parked in the middle of the street, basically making it hard to get into the driveway if we had to, and all that, as well as we got our neighbors doing the little car thing next door. So yeah, I do apologize for the distraction. But like I said, basically that's what John's looking at. Like one of the other reasons they're doing this is because they want to start that bidding war to see, who between, let's say, Paramount, Netflix, maybe Disney, maybe Universal is willing to put, maybe even Sony, if you will, is willing to put in, the biggest bid to basically buy, the Warner Brothers name, the Warner Brothers, overall, the overall corporation, if you will, and take it under the wing, take it under the umbrella. And hey, if that's why Warner Brothers turned them down, not only because they're hoping Paramount will make a bigger offer, quadruple that initial offer they made, but if the other reason is because they want to start a bidding war between them, Universal, Sony, Netflix, Amazon Prime, like I said, Universal, Disney, you name it. If that's the initial, the other initial idea, the other initial reasoning for the turn down of the Paramount offer, then again, that's a smart move. Basically get as much as you can with the best offer you can. Basically say, hey, we'll sell, but this is what we want, and all that. And obviously, part of the deal would be, Zaslav would want to be, obviously part of the deal is Zaslav, he knows that, hey, whoever was to buy them could potentially kick him out. Maybe part of the deal is, hey, we'll sell, but I want to stay on as CEO. I want to stay on as CEO, and oh, by the way, I also want to make sure that we still allow the split to happen because that's one of the other goals that they want to do. By betting on themselves that there is no sale. Because again, you put that for sale sign up there with the words in between quotations and with an asterisk mark, then obviously that's a sign right there that the sale may not be the sale may not be a permanent thing. It may be just temporary until Warner Brothers gets enough stability, enough financial stability to be able to say, yeah, we can still make it on our own, and then they can go through with the split and everything that they want to do. But basically but basically right now the sale is still kind of being out there. The offer is still out there. Obviously they're saying, hey, look, we'll let somebody buy us, but here's our initial, here's the initial offer, here's the initial amount we want, and here's the stipulations, the negotiable stipulations we want as well. And obviously, I think, like I was saying, Zaslav realizes, hey, whoever was to buy them could say, hey, we're done with you. He might put it in there, hey, I want to be retained. I want to be in charge of the studio part of Warner Brothers, as well as you allow the other guy to be in charge of the cable television part, because obviously part of the agreement would be, hey, they'll be under the new ownership, they'll be under some new owners, but also they get, things, things basically remain, pretty much the same, going forward. Like, hey, we have new owners. Like, if Paramount does buy them, Paramount, agrees to their terms, they'll still be able to do the split, and things will be like they never, like nothing's really changed, or nothing's going to change, except they're just under the Skydance Paramount umbrella now, and that's it. That may be part of the deal. That hey, keep me, Zaslav's like, keep me on board, keep the other guy on board. Let us still allow us to do the split, and we'll be good. You know, and that might be what he's hoping for. He's hoping for somebody, whether it is Paramount, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Amazon Prime, whether it's Universal, Sony, maybe even Disney, if you will. He's hoping someone's going to step up and say, hey, you want us to still allow you to do your split, and you want to be kept on and all that, and your friend to be kept on, no problem, you got a deal. That's probably what he's hoping for, and that's why John Campea is saying that the second reason he believes that they turned down that offer from Paramount is not only because they feel Paramount, that being Warner Brothers, will offer them a big, potentially offer them a bigger amount, to buy them outright, but also he feels it's to start a bidding war with all the names I just mentioned, and the potential that if they start a bidding war, Zaslav will hope one of them will not only pay them the amount they want, but agree to the terms that they're hoping for, and those terms more than likely are to keep him on board, keep his buddy on board, allow the split to still happen, and then go from there. And again, these first two reasonings are very good reasonings that can't be brought up. Then the third reason, speaking of the split, that John Campea listed as the third reason. He says that WB believes they can be successful splitting the company into two separate entities and operating that way. And that is a possibility too. Warner Brothers might think, hey, we don't need, to sell ourselves to anybody and let them take control. We don't need to sell ourselves to anybody and say, hey, now that they're in charge, we're out of a job. They want to bet on themselves, and the best way to bet on themselves is to do something that they feel is probably the best, option for them to go in. And that option is to essentially, split the company in two. Because as we've heard, the television cable portion, which would be known as Discovery Global, they would be inheriting most of the debt, that Warner Bros. Discovery has right now. They'd be inheriting most of the debt. Well, the movie side, the movie streaming side of things, if you will, gaming and streaming side of things, television as well. Well, television is going to be on Discovery Global, but anyway, the movie streaming and gaming stuff and all that, even animation, animation portion, they would still have some of the debt, but they'd be mostly debt free. Like they'd still have a tiny bit of it, but they basically be like, let's say 75%, maybe 65% debt free. Well, the rest of it, most of it is going to be inherited by Discovery Global. And if that's the direction they feel they need to go to prove that they can still, handle being on their own and not needing any financial backing from anybody else, being owned by anybody else, then, so be it. That might be the best direction to go in, to bet on themselves. To bet on themselves and see what happens. And if it doesn't turn out the way they want, then yeah, maybe that's when they say, okay, Paramount, Netflix, Universal, give us your best offer, we'll take it, and you take over. And that's about it. So that's another good idea. That's another good idea as well, and we'll have to see. And then the fourth reason John Campea gave, and it's another good reason, WB believes they can get more selling to companies. In other words, what John Campea is saying is by still going through with the split, they could still go with a sale. Like after they do the split going into next year, where you have just Warner Brothers and then Discovery Global, again, they'd be under the WBD banner. They'd just be their own separate entities. Like Discovery Global, under it would say a Warner Brothers Discovery Company. And then Warner Brothers Pictures, it'll be just a Warner Brothers Discovery Company. And that's it. That's all it would be, right? So basically, the idea that John feels, the last option that John feels they can go with is by splitting into two, they can sell both off and get more, more than what they're asking for now. In other words, they can get more from what they're asking for now if they were to sell as a whole and everything, or at least try to sell and negotiate things to kind of remain as they were and to keep certain people on. So So there's that opportunity as well, that they could probably get more selling to companies, that being Warner Brothers and Discovery Global individually, than they could as a whole. And that's a good idea as well. And maybe that might work too. They bet on themselves for a bit, and then when they feel like, okay, enough time has passed, they might decide whether they're succeeding or not to, make that call and say, okay, we're willing to sell to the biggest bidder, both Warner Brother Pictures and Discovery Global. Give us your best offer, kind of deal. So that's a good, that's a good possibility too. That's a good possibility too. I mean, any one of these four is a good possibility. So I got to give a shout out to John Campia for pointing that out. For making this list, and as to why Warner Brothers turned down the initial offer by Paramount, because again, as he listed, he feels Paramount could either pay more, or will be willing. That being Warner Brothers, they feel Paramount would be willing to pay him more to purchase them. The other reason, and that's a good reason, the second reason is they feel they can get a bidding war going to where it's not just Paramount, but you got all the other studios I've mentioned, bidding, for the rights to own them, and maybe negotiate with them on terms that would keep certain people on board, like Zaslav and this other guy, as well as let the split happen. And then the other reason being, hey, let's bet on ourselves and do the split and see how things go from there. And if things don't succeed, then then we'll sell. Then we'll decide, hey, we want to sell, and see who is willing to take us under the wing. Basically help us pay off the debt that we have. And then the other reason, the fourth and final reason, is a good one too. That being the fact that, hey, if we can split the company in two and try to see where we go from there, and success or not, decide, hey, when the time is right, we finally want to sell. Instead of selling one company, we can sell two different companies. And that's a good strategy too. That's a good possibility too. But yeah, I looked at what he was listing, and I'm thinking, he's got a good point with all four of these. A good point with all four of these because of some of the reasons I've mentioned. And I'm sure some of the reasons he's mentioned. And I'm sure a lot of you looking at this, you're like, you know what? Those are not bad strategies that Warner Brothers would go with if they wanted to. If they wanted to go down down any one of those routes, that wouldn't be a bad strategy. But we'll have to see what their initial plan is. We'll have to see what happens going forward into 2026. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and also click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning. And also support me at Patreon, Cash App, and Venmo. And in closing, guys, also go to my Fourth Wall store and my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. But yeah, guys, that's all I can really say about it. Let me know what your thoughts are. Which of these four options do you think Warner Brothers might go with? If you think John Campia, is on the money with any one of those, or do you think something might happen that's out of the blue that we're not even thinking about? To where Warner Brothers could sell, but still kind of maintain things as they are, or they can basically bet on themselves and maybe succeed when nobody would expect it, and do something that nobody would see coming. Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are, and until then, I am out.